Today I'm going to show you how to create a manual invoice going into the invoice screen and creating one for Lubes for two different customers. There are two places where you can create an invoice. Once you're in the sales module, in the activities section you have the invoices menu, and in the create section there's a new invoice. When you click the new invoice menu in the create section, it'll just automatically take you to the actual invoice data entry screen. The other screen is the invoices grid, and that will actually show you records previously added in the invoice. So in this area here, it'll show you all the previously inserted or created invoice that I've done today. So from here you would just click new, and once you create new, it'll look just like the create new invoice from the other screen I showed you earlier. It defaults to a standard source type, and there are other options in there dependent on where the transaction is coming from. As you can see, there are the software, which is what we use here for iRely. You have tank delivery. You also have transport delivery, which is the two that additional sources that you guys would be using. In the type section, that's where you would change it if you wanted to switch the invoice type to a credit memo, a debit memo, a cash, or a cash refund. So that's where we would change the type. The customer, when you click the little question mark, you have an option to switch your default filter. In this case, I have my first column set to customer number, so it's going to filter by the customer number when I'm typing in. So this invoice is going to be for Purvis Industries. So I'm going to go ahead and type in Purvis. So now what this is going to do is show you every single record in the system that contains the word Purvis in the customer number. As you can see, all of your customer numbers from origin came over, which are the ship to locations, and you have your bill to location. In this specific field in the customer, you do have to select the main bill to, because that's how the system is going to know that all of the historical data goes under the main customer code. So I'm going to go ahead and select this main customer, and then off to the right side it defaults to the ship to that's set up in the customer file. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this to a different ship to address by just clicking a little question mark, and maybe I want to use this one, the Sturman's location. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in the item number, and then you can tab through or take your mouse and click it and it'll select, and to go to the next field, tab until you are in the shipped field, and I'm going to go ahead and type in 1. And if you need to modify the price, you would change the price field. And you keep tabbing until you're in the item number again. And then tab, type in your shipped number, and then if the price is incorrect, you go ahead and modify that now. So our total, because we don't have a wide screen here, our total is $538.69. Currently, there are no taxes set up, and this customer must be exempt, and it looks like on the sales ticket list they are not being charged taxes as well. But do notice that the tax group is blank. So this tax group should never be blank unless the customer is not set to a tax group. So in this case, because the freight terms is delivery, it is pulling the tax group from the ship to location. So let's take a look how that ship to location is set. So it looks like we have a Texas tax group, and there's no taxes set up for the tax group Texas, and so that's why it's blank. Um, so what you need to make sure is set this up with a proper tax group, so that way the customer will be charged correctly and have the proper tax group, even if they are exempt. You should always have a tax group just to make sure that you are setting up all of your customers. Otherwise, it won't update the tax report grid. So I'm going to go ahead and close this screen. And just for the sake of doing this, we're going to select the tax group in the tax group field. And I typed in TX, and then it found everything that contains TX within the tax group. And since there's no tax code, that's okay. There are no taxes calculated. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And up at the upper right hand, if you don't type in an invoice number, it'll default to the sequential number and add SI to the prefix of the invoice. Now, if you do have to modify the invoice number, you do need to do that prior to saving the transaction, because this field is not editable after saving. If you need to enter a comment, you will go to the Instructions tab and type your comment in here. Save the transaction. Now, if you are okay with printing the invoice or emailing the invoice at this point, you would go ahead and click Print. It'll preview the invoice, and it shows you the records with your instructions or your comments up here on the top right side with the totals and the item codes. And then you click that little printer icon, the first one on the left side, and then you would select which printer you need to send this to, and then you go ahead and click Print. You also have an option to download this, and then it'll show up in your downloads folder, and if you click it, you do have that as an option to see there, and then print it from there as well. If you just want to archive it for whatever reason, you can download it, and you do have to rename it later, but you could do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and close the screen. If you are able to go ahead and post a transaction, you can go ahead and click Post. But if you want to see what the journal entries are going to be for the transaction, you can click the Post Preview, and this will show you the journal entry. So I'm going to go ahead and hide some of these columns so that way we can see majority of the columns at one time. And I'm going to make that slightly smaller. So the journal entries for invoices for inventory type transactions, as normal, it will debit the accounts receivable, it will credit the sales, credit inventory, which is entirely different from origin. These four entries are new in I-21. Whereas in origin, we only hit sales, accounts receivable, taxes, etc. So in I-21, we are adjusting inventory at the time of sales and adjusting costs at the time as well. So assuming everything is good, then you go ahead and just post a transaction. I'm going to go ahead and close this